My daughter stood in the doorway of my art studio, the room where I'd spent 37 years creating the paintings that had supported our family, and told me I needed to clear it out because she was converting it into a nursery. "Mom, you're not really painting anymore anyway, and we need the space. The baby's coming in 4 months, and this is the only room with good light. You understand, right?" I was standing at my easel, brush in hand, working on a commission piece worth $8,000, $1 of 12 commissions I had lined up for the year, part of the $140,000 I made annually from my art. But I didn't explain that, didn't defend my work, didn't argue about the commissions or the income or the fact that this studio was the foundation of everything. I just looked at my daughter, Shayna, at her hand resting on her pregnant belly, at the way she'd already mentally redesigned this room without asking. And I nodded, calm, quiet. "When do you need it by?" She looked surprised, like she'd been prepared for an argument. "Really? You're okay with this?" I didn't say I was okay with it. I asked when you need it by. "Well, ideally by the end of next month. That gives us time to paint, set up the crib, get everything ready." I set down my brush, wiped my hands on my apron. "I'll think about it." "Mom, there's nothing to think about. We live here too. We need this room. You're going to have to make some sacrifices now that you're going to be a grandmother." That word, sacrifices, like my art was a hobby I could set aside, like the career I'd built over 4 decades was negotiable. I didn't argue, I observed. I observed the way Shayna assumed I'd comply, the way she'd already decided this room was hers, the way she spoke about my work like it was something I did to pass time, not something that had paid for her college, her wedding, the down payment on this very house we all lived in. "We'll talk about it later," I said quietly. "There's nothing to talk about. Mom, you're in the way. We need you to step back and let us build our family here." In the way, those 3 words hung in the air between us. I could have explained, could have shown her the commission contracts, could have reminded her that this house, this studio, everything she was claiming as ours, it was all built on my art. Instead, I turned back to my easel, picked up my brush, continued painting. She stood there for another moment, waiting for me to argue. When I didn't, she left, frustrated, confused. And I stood at my easel, painting carefully, thinking about what she'd just revealed. Not that she needed a nursery, that was reasonable, but the way she demanded my studio specifically, the way she dismissed my work, the way she'd told me I was in the way. That was the moment I understood what was really happening. This wasn't about needing space. This was about establishing hierarchy, about claiming territory, about pushing me to the margins of a home I owned so Shayna and her husband could take center stage. I didn't react, I remembered. I remembered that Shayna and Dante had moved in temporarily 18 months ago while they saved for their own place. I remembered how temporarily had become permanent without discussion. I remembered how they'd gradually taken over. The living room became their entertainment space. The kitchen operated on their schedule. The garage filled with their things. And now they wanted my studio, the one space that was completely, unquestionably mine. They thought I was broken, thought I'd just accept being pushed aside, thought "you're in the way" would make me shrink and comply. That was their first mistake. Now listen, before I tell you what happened when I nodded calmly and waited instead of fighting, before I show you what happens when you let people reveal exactly who they are, I need you to do something. If you're watching this and someone has ever told you you're in the way in your own life, hit subscribe right now. Comment where you're from, because what happened when I stayed quiet and watched them take more and more? You need to hear every word. Turn on notifications. This goes places they never saw coming. That evening at dinner, Shayna brought it up again, this time with Dante backing her up. "Mom, we've been thinking. The studio conversion is just the first step. We're going to need to make some other changes too. Now that the baby's coming, we need this to feel like our family home, not just your house where we're staying." I ate my chicken, didn't respond. "We were thinking the dining room could be more child-friendly. Maybe put away some of your breakables. And the living room, those paintings you have on the walls are kind of dark for a family space. We'd like to redecorate. Dante spoke up. Mrs. Laurent, we really appreciate you letting us stay here, but Shayna's right, we need to make this place work for all of us. And that means everyone compromising. I looked at him. Compromising. Yeah, you give a little, we give a little. It's how families work. What are you giving? He looked confused. What do you mean? You said everyone compromises. You're asking me to give up my studio, put away my belongings, take down my paintings. What are you giving? Shayna jumped in. Mom, we're giving you a grandchild. We're staying here to help you. You're 71, living alone in this big house. We're keeping you company, making sure you're not isolated. That's what we're giving. I set down my fork, looked at both of them carefully. I didn't ask you to stay here to keep me company. You asked to stay here to save money. Well, yes, but... And I'm not lonely or isolated. I have my work, my art community, my friends. I was living quite well before you moved in. Mom, you're being defensive. I'm being clear. You've framed your presence here as something you're doing for me. But Shayna, you moved in because you couldn't afford rent while saving for a house. That's fine. I was happy to help, but let's not pretend you're here out of charity. Silence, both of them staring at me. Now about the studio. I have 12 commissions lined up worth a combined $140,000. That studio is where I work. It's not a spare room. It's my professional workspace. I'm not clearing it out. But Mom, where are we supposed to put the nursery? That's something you'll need to figure out. This house has 4 bedrooms. You're using one, I'm using one. That leaves 2 spare bedrooms. Use one of those. But they don't have the same light. Then you'll need to add lighting. Shayna, I've been accommodating. You've taken over most of the common spaces. I've adjusted my schedule around yours. I've been flexible. But the studio is not negotiable. Dante's face hardened. Mrs. Laurent, I don't think you're being reasonable. We have a baby coming. A baby takes priority over paintings. My career takes priority over your desire for perfect lighting. Dante, I've been a professional artist for 40 years. This isn't a hobby. This is how I've supported myself, paid for this house, funded Shayna's entire life. I'm not ending my career because you want my workspace. Shayna stood up. Fine, we'll use one of the spare bedrooms, but Mom, you're being selfish. You're putting your art before your grandchild. I'm putting my livelihood before your aesthetic preferences. There's a difference. She left the table. Dante followed her, and I sat alone, finishing my dinner, thinking about what had just happened. I'd drawn a boundary, set a clear limit, and they'd responded by calling me selfish and unreasonable. That was important information. It told me this wasn't about the nursery. It was about control, about seeing how much they could take, about whether I'd prioritize their wants over my needs. I didn't argue with their characterization. I just noted it, documented it mentally. They thought time was on their side, that eventually I'd give in, that the guilt of being an unsupportive grandmother would wear me down. They were wrong. 2 days later, I came home from the art supply store to find Shayna in my studio. She was measuring the walls, taking photos, making notes. What are you doing? Just getting measurements, in case you change your mind. I won't be changing my mind. Well, we'll see. Mom, once the baby comes, you're going to want us to be happy here. You're going to want to do everything you can to make this work for your grandchild. So I'm just being prepared. I looked at her carefully, at the measuring tape in her hand, at the way she was cataloging my space like it was already hers. Shayna, this conversation is over. Please leave my studio. It's not just your studio anymore, Mom. It's part of our family home. No, it's my studio in my house where you're staying temporarily. There's a difference. We're not temporary anymore. We live here. And you need to accept that things are going to change. I could have argued, could have pointed out that temporarily was the agreement, could have reminded her this was my house, legally and financially. Instead, I just looked at her, silent, calm, waiting. She got uncomfortable. Why are you looking at me like that? I'm just observing. Observing what? You, your assumptions, your sense of entitlement. Shayna, I'm going to ask you to leave the studio now. If you don't, I'll have to reconsider our entire living arrangement. She left, but the anger on her face told me everything I needed to know. This was escalating, and I needed to be prepared for what came next. That evening, I made a phone call to my attorney, Simone Caldwell. Simone, I need to review my will and set up some protections. What kind of protections? My daughter and her husband have been living with me. They're trying to take over my home and my studio. I need to make sure my assets are protected if things deteriorate. What assets are we talking about? The house, obviously, but also my art. I have 127 original paintings, 43 of which are worth $15,000 or more each. Total estimated value of my collection is around $980,000. Then there's my ongoing commission income, my retirement accounts, the contents of the studio. Simone, if something happened to me right now, Shayna would inherit everything. And I'm not confident she understands the value of what she'd be inheriting. You think she'd sell your work? I think she'd convert my studio into a nursery and put my paintings in storage where they deteriorate. I think she sees my art as decorations, not as a valuable collection built over 4 decades. I need to protect it. Simone scheduled an appointment for the following week. We'd review everything, update the will, set up trusts if necessary, make sure my life's work was protected. But I didn't tell Shayna or Dante about the appointment, didn't mention my concerns, just made my plans quietly. That was the strategy: stay calm, observe, document, prepare. Let them think they were winning while I built my defenses. 3 days after the studio confrontation, something happened that showed me how far they were willing to go. I came home from a gallery meeting to find my studio door open. Furniture had been moved. My easel was shoved into a corner. Paintings were stacked carelessly against the wall. And in the center of the room, Dante was measuring for crib placement. I stood in the doorway, silent, just watching. He noticed me after a moment. "Oh, hey, Mrs. Laurent. We thought maybe if you saw how nice the nursery could be, you'd reconsider. You moved my things without permission. We were careful. You stacked paintings worth $60,000 against a wall like their poster board. You moved an easel I've had for 23 years. You entered my locked studio. How did you get in?" Shayna found a key. Shayna broke into my studio. That's what you're telling me. She didn't break in, she just... Get out. Mrs. Laurent, if you just listen. Get out of my studio right now. He left, and I stood looking at the damage. Not physical damage, everything was intact, but violation, boundary destruction. The message was clear: nothing I claimed as mine was actually safe from them. I carefully moved everything back, checked each painting for damage, reset my workspace exactly as it had been. Then I called a locksmith, had the studio door lock changed to something they couldn't pick or find a key for. I was the only one with access now. When Shayna came home that evening, she immediately confronted me. "You changed the locks on the studio." "Yes." "Mom, that's ridiculous. You're acting like we're going to steal something. You entered my workspace without permission and moved my belongings. That's not acceptable. We were trying to help you visualize. You were trying to force me into giving you what you want. Shayna, I've set a boundary. The studio is not available. You pushing that boundary after I've made myself clear tells me I need to protect my space more seriously. This is insane. You're treating us like criminals in your own house. I'm treating you like people who have demonstrated they don't respect my boundaries. Shayna, you have 2 spare bedrooms available for a nursery. Use one of them. The studio is off limits." "Fine, we'll use the spare bedroom. But Mom, you're going to regret this. You're choosing paintings over your grandchild. When that baby grows up and asks why Grandma was never involved, I'm going to tell them the truth, that you cared more about your art than about family." She stormed off, and I stood in my protected studio, thinking about that threat. She was going to weaponize my grandchild, use access to the baby as leverage to get what she wanted, punish me for having boundaries by limiting my relationship with my own grandchild. That was important information. It showed me exactly who I was dealing with. I didn't chase her, didn't try to explain or defend, just noted the threat, added it to the growing list of reasons I needed legal protection. 1 week later, I met with Simone, reviewed my entire estate. Simone, I want to change my will. Right now, everything goes to Shayna. I want to set up a trust instead. The house, the art collection, the retirement accounts, all of it goes into a trust with specific terms. What terms? The art cannot be sold for at least 10 years after my death. It must be properly stored and maintained. If Shayna wants to inherit the collection, she has to demonstrate she understands its value and will preserve it. If she can't or won't meet those terms, the collection goes to a museum or art foundation. That's going to make her angry. I know, but Simone, she sees my work as an obstacle to her comfort. She called me in the way when I was standing in my own studio working on an $8,000 commission. She doesn't understand what she'd be inheriting. The trust protects my legacy. What about the house? Life estate for me with specific terms about who can live here. Shayna can inherit it eventually, but with restrictions about the studio space. It has to remain intact as an art studio for at least 5 years after my death. If she violates that term, the house goes to a different beneficiary. Who? My niece, Camille. She's an artist too. She'd understand. Simone drafted everything. I signed the new will that afternoon. And I still didn't tell Shayna. Didn't explain the changes. Just made my plans quietly while she assumed everything would eventually be hers on her terms. 2 weeks after changing the will, Shayna announced they were converting the spare bedroom into a nursery. They started painting, buying furniture, setting everything up. I stayed out of it, didn't comment, didn't interfere, just let them do what they needed to do in a space that was actually available. But I also noticed something else. They'd started treating me differently, more dismissive, more conditional. Mom, can you pick up some paint for us? Oh, wait, you're probably too busy with your paintings. Mom, we're having friends over this weekend. Maybe you could eat in your room so we have space. Mom, we need to talk about grocery costs. You're buying expensive ingredients for your meals while we're trying to save. Can you contribute more to household expenses? Each statement was designed to diminish me, to position me as a burden, to frame their presence as something I should be grateful for rather than something I was accommodating. I didn't argue with any of it, just observed the pattern. They were building a narrative. Mom is difficult. Mom is unreasonable. Mom isn't being supportive. We're trying to make this work, but she's making it hard. I could see where this was going. Eventually, they'd use that narrative to justify something bigger, something I needed to be ready for. 3 months before Shayna's due date, Dante approached me with a proposal. Mrs. Laurent, Shayna and I have been talking. We think it would be better for everyone if we made this arrangement more official, more permanent. What do you mean? We'd like to buy the house from you. Not all at once. We don't have that kind of money. But maybe you could sell it to us on a payment plan. That way it becomes our house officially, we can make the changes we need, and you'd still get the value of the property. I don't want to sell my house. But Mrs. Laurent, think about it. You're 71. How long do you really need a house this size? You could move into a smaller place, something easier to maintain. We'd pay you monthly. Everyone wins. Except I'd lose my home and my studio. Well, yes, but you'd have the money. I don't need money. I need my home and my workspace. Dante, the answer is no. His expression changed, hardened. We're trying to be fair here, trying to do this the right way. But Mrs. Laurent, Shayna is going to inherit this house eventually anyway. We're just asking to start that process now, with you benefiting financially. You're asking me to sell you my house at a discount so you can kick me out. That's not. We wouldn't kick you out. You could stay as long as you need. As a guest in what used to be my own home. No. The answer is no, Dante. This conversation is over. You're making a mistake. Shayna's not going to be happy about this. Then Shayna and I will talk about it. That evening, Shayna confronted me. She was crying, furious, devastated. Mom, Dante told me you refused to even consider selling us the house. Do you know how humiliating that is? We're trying to build a life here, and you're treating us like we're trying to steal from you. I looked at her calmly. You want me to sell you my house on a payment plan and move out. How is that not trying to take my home? It's not taking. We'd pay you for it. At what price? At what interest rate? With what down payment? Shayna, did you and Dante actually work out terms, or did you just assume I'd give you whatever you wanted? She didn't answer, because of course they hadn't worked out terms, they'd just assumed. The house is not for sale. Not to you. Not to anyone. I'm staying here in my home with my studio for as long as I choose. If that doesn't work for you and Dante, you're welcome to make other living arrangements. Are you kicking us out? I'm telling you the terms. You're welcome to stay here as guests. But this is my home, not yours, not yet. Maybe not ever, depending on how this goes. Depending on how what goes. Depending on whether you can learn to respect boundaries and treat me like a person instead of an obstacle. Shayna, you've spent months trying to take my studio, my space, my home. You've called me selfish, unreasonable in the way. You've threatened to limit my access to my grandchild if I don't comply with your demands. Those aren't the actions of someone who deserves to inherit everything I've built. You're threatening to disinherit me. I'm telling you that inheritance isn't guaranteed. It's earned through respect and relationship. Right now, you're not earning it. She left my room crying, and I heard her and Dante arguing in their bedroom, his voice getting louder, hers defensive. Good, let them fight about it. Let them realize I wasn't the pushover they'd assumed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Shayna had become. When had my daughter turned into someone who thought she was entitled to everything I owned, who saw me as an obstacle instead of a person? I didn't have answers, just sadness and growing resolve. The next morning, I found Dante in the kitchen. Alone, he looked tired, angry. Mrs. Laurent, we need to come to an understanding. About how this is going to work. Shayna is pregnant with your grandchild. We're living here because you invited us. We're family. And you're treating us like we're trying to rob you. You literally asked me to sell you my house yesterday. We asked you to consider an arrangement that would benefit everyone. By giving you my home and pushing me out. Dante, here's the understanding. This is my house. You're staying here as a favor to Shayna. That favor can be revoked if you continue to push boundaries and make demands. If you want to stay, you respect my space, my work, and my decisions. If you can't do that, there are apartments available in this city. You'd really kick out your pregnant daughter. I'd really require that people living in my home treat me with basic respect. Yes. He stared at me, and I saw something shift in his expression, something calculating. Fine, we'll play it your way for now, but Mrs. Laurent, you should know, we're not going anywhere. This is our home too, and eventually it'll be ours completely. You can make that easy or difficult, but the outcome is the same. Then he left for work, and I stood in my kitchen, processing what he just said. Eventually, it'll be ours completely. Not might be, not hopefully, but a certainty, like my death and his inheritance of everything was a foregone conclusion. That was the moment I understood I needed to move faster. Because something was very wrong, and I was running out of time to protect myself from whatever they were planning. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I called Simone that same morning. I need to add something to the estate plan, immediately. What's wrong? Dante just told me that my house will be theirs completely eventually. Not might be, will be, like it's certain, like my death is something they're counting on. Silence on the other end. Then, Camille, that's concerning language. What exactly did he say? I repeated the conversation word for word. Simone was quiet for a long moment. Camille, I'm going to suggest something you might not like. I think you should get a full medical examination. Physical and cognitive. Full documentation that you're healthy and competent. Why? Because if something happens to you, they're going to inherit everything unless your will can withstand a challenge. If Dante is talking like your death is imminent or certain, I want ironclad proof that you're currently healthy and of sound mind. That way, if they try to claim you were declining or incompetent when you made these estate changes, we have documentation proving otherwise. I scheduled the physical for that afternoon. Dr. Marcus Towsaint had been my physician for 22 years. He knew my baseline. The examination was thorough. Blood work, cognitive testing, full health assessment. After 2 hours, Dr. Towsaint sat down with the results. Camille, you're in excellent health. Blood pressure perfect. Cholesterol good. Cognitive function sharp. You're healthier than most 50-year-olds I see. There's no medical reason to expect anything but many more years of active life. Put that in writing, as detailed as possible. Are you expecting a challenge to your competence? I'm expecting my daughter and son-in-law to claim I was declining when I made recent changes to my estate. I need proof that I wasn't. Dr. Towsaint wrote a comprehensive letter. 3 pages detailing my excellent health, my cognitive sharpness, my capacity to make decisions. Dated, signed, notarized. I took that letter directly to Simone's office. She added it to my estate file. Camille, there's something else we should discuss. Life insurance. Do you have any policies? A small one, $50,000. Shayna is the beneficiary. I'd suggest changing that, not removing her entirely. That could trigger suspicion, but maybe splitting it. Part to Shayna, part to a charity or trust. That way, if something happens to you, she doesn't get a sudden windfall that could be interpreted as motive. Motive for what? Simone looked at me carefully. I'm not saying anyone is planning anything, but Dante's language about your death being certain, combined with the pressure to get your house, your studio, your assets, it creates a pattern that concerns me professionally. I want to make sure we've eliminated any financial incentive for something to happen to you prematurely. The words hung in the air between us. Financial incentive for something to happen to me. You think they might try to hurt me? I think desperate people do desperate things. I think Dante's behavior suggests desperation. And I think we should be very careful about making sure your assets are protected in ways that don't benefit from your death. I changed the life insurance that afternoon. Split it 3 ways, $20,000 to Shayna, $15,000 to Camille, $15,000 to an arts education charity. If something happened to me, Shayna would get something, but not enough to make my death financially advantageous. When I got home that evening, Shayna was waiting for me. She'd been crying. Mom, where were you all day? I called you 6 times. I was handling personal business. What kind of personal business? The kind that's personal. Shayna, I'm 71 years old. I don't need to report my whereabouts to you. I was worried. You're getting older and you were gone all day without telling anyone. I'm getting older, not incompetent. I went to my attorney's office and my doctor's office, routine appointments. There was no reason to worry. Why did you go to your attorney? I looked at her carefully. Why do you want to know? Because you're my mom. I care about your well-being if something's wrong. Nothing's wrong. I was updating some estate documents, routine maintenance. Her face changed. What kind of updates? The kind that ensure my assets are protected and distributed according to my wishes. Mom, you didn't change your will, did you? My will is my business. Mom, tell me you didn't disinherit me. I didn't disinherit you. But Shayna, I did make some changes to protect my work and ensure my legacy is preserved. Those changes don't hurt you unless you plan to sell my art collection or convert my studio the moment I died. I would never. Wouldn't you? Shayna, you've been trying to take my studio for months. You've called my work an obstacle. You've treated my career like a hobby I should set aside. What would you do with 127 paintings worth nearly $1 million if I died tomorrow? She didn't answer, because we both knew the answer. The new will protects my work. That's all you need to know. If you respect my legacy and preserve it properly, you'll inherit everything eventually. If you don't, the work goes elsewhere. This is because of the studio, isn't it? Because I asked for 1 room. This is because of how you asked. Because you didn't ask, you demanded. Because you told me I was in the way in my own workspace. Because you and Dante have spent months trying to take control of my home, my space, my life. Shayna, you've shown me I can't trust you to value what I've built, so I've protected it. She stood up. I need to talk to Dante. After she left, I sat alone thinking about the conversation. About how quickly she jumped to, "Did you disinherit me?" About how she hadn't denied she'd planned to sell the art or convert the studio. About how my own daughter had revealed exactly who she'd become. That night I heard them arguing again, voices rising and falling through the walls. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was clear. Anger, panic, planning. I didn't sleep well, kept thinking about Simone's words. Desperate people do desperate things. Were they desperate enough to hurt me, to speed up the inheritance they thought they deserved? I didn't know, but I wasn't taking chances. The next morning, I called a security company, had cameras installed. Front door, back door, studio, my bedroom, living room, kitchen. When Shayna saw the technician installing them, she confronted me immediately. "What are these cameras for?" "Security." "Security from what? We live in a safe neighborhood." "Security from anyone who might enter my home without permission. Security from anyone who might go through my things without asking. Security from any incidents that might occur that I'd need documentation of." "You're recording us, in your own house." "I'm recording everyone in my house, including myself. These cameras run 24/7 and back up to cloud storage. If anything happens, if I fall, if something goes missing, if anyone enters my studio without permission, there will be a record." "This is insane. You're treating us like criminals." "I'm treating my home like the valuable asset it is. Shayna, you're welcome to live here, but you're being recorded. If that's a problem, there are other places you could stay." "Mom, what has gotten into you? Ever since we asked about the studio, you've been paranoid and hostile. Ever since you told me I was in the way in my own workspace, I've been protecting myself. There's a difference." She stormed off, and I watched her go, thinking about that word, paranoid. That's what they'd call it, what they'd tell other people. Mom's become paranoid in her old age, installing cameras, changing her will, acting suspicious of her own family. Building a narrative, laying groundwork. I didn't argue with the characterization, just made sure everything was documented. 2 days later, I came home from a gallery opening to find Shayna in the kitchen with her older sister, Brielle. They'd clearly been talking about me. "Oh, Mom's home." Shayna's voice had an edge. "Brielle came to visit. We were just discussing your recent behavior." I looked at Brielle. We'd always had a good relationship. She lived 3 hours away with her partner, visited occasionally. "What behavior?" Brielle looked uncomfortable. "Mom, Shayna told me about the cameras, and the will changes, and, Mom, are you okay? Is something going on we should know about?" I set down my purse, looked at both my daughters. "I'm fine. I've made some changes to protect my assets and my legacy. That's not unusual for someone my age." "But the cameras, Mom, that's not normal. Shayna says you're acting like she and Dante are trying to steal from you." "Shayna and Dante asked me to sell them my house on a payment plan and move out. Dante told me this house will be theirs completely eventually. They've been pressuring me to give up my studio. They've been dismissive of my work and my boundaries. I'm not paranoid, Brielle. I'm being careful." Brielle looked at Shayna. "Is that true? Did you ask Mom to sell you the house?" "We asked her to consider an arrangement." "Did you tell her she was in the way?" Shayna's face flushed. "That was taken out of context." "Did you say it?" "Yes, but I meant." "Shayna, what the hell?" Brielle turned to me. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know the full story. Shayna made it sound like you were declining and acting irrationally." "That's the narrative they're building. I'm old, therefore I'm irrational. I'm protecting my assets, therefore I'm paranoid. I'm setting boundaries, therefore I'm difficult. Brielle, I'm not declining. I had a full medical evaluation 2 days ago. Cognitive function excellent. Physical health excellent. I'm not confused or incompetent. I'm just refusing to be pushed aside in my own home. I believe you. And Mom, if you need anything, if things get worse, call me. I'll come. After Brielle left, Shayna was furious. You made me look terrible in front of my sister. I told her the truth. If that makes you look terrible, perhaps you should examine your behavior. I am 7 months pregnant, Mom. I asked for one room and you've turned this into some massive conflict. You didn't ask for one room. You demanded my studio. Then you demanded I sell you my house. Then you and Dante started treating me like I'm in the way of your life. Shayna, you've escalated this at every turn. I've just been protecting myself. From what? Your own daughter. From someone who sees me as an obstacle to her inheritance, instead of a person deserving respect. She left the room crying, and I stood in my kitchen thinking about what had just happened. Brielle had seen through Shayna's narrative, had recognized the manipulation. That was good. That meant I had at least one person who might believe me if things got worse. And I had a growing feeling they were going to get worse. 3 weeks later, something happened that confirmed my fears. I was working in my studio, door locked, camera recording, when I heard a crash from the kitchen. I went to investigate and found Dante standing over my open purse, my wallet in his hand. What are you doing? He jumped, looked guilty, then his expression shifted to defensive. I needed cash. I was going to pay you back. You were going through my purse without asking. It's not a big deal. It's stealing. Get out of my purse, Dante. I wasn't stealing. I was borrowing. Without permission, that's stealing. How much did you take? Just $40. Put it back now. He threw the money on the counter. You're being ridiculous. It's $40. We're family. Family doesn't steal from family. Dante, this is your last warning. If I catch you going through my things again, you and Shayna are gone. Immediately. You can't kick out your pregnant daughter. I can kick out a thief. And Dante, this is on camera. If you want to argue about whether this counts as stealing, I have video evidence. His face changed, realization that he'd been recorded, that I had proof. I wasn't, it was a misunderstanding. Leave my purse alone. Leave my studio alone. Leave my things alone. This is your final warning. After he left, I reviewed the camera footage, watched him enter the kitchen, look around to see if anyone was watching, then deliberately open my purse and remove my wallet. Take 2 20s. Start to leave. Not a misunderstanding. Theft. Deliberate, planned theft. I downloaded the footage, backed it up multiple places, added it to my evidence file. Then I called Simone. They're stealing from me now, small amounts, but it's escalating. Do you want to press charges? Not yet, but I want this documented. Simone, I think you were right. I think they're desperate enough to do something drastic, and I think I need to be ready for what comes next. What do you think comes next? I don't know, but whatever it is, I'm going to be prepared. That evening, Shayna approached me, apologetic, sweet, completely different from her recent attitude. Mom, Dante told me what happened. He feels terrible. He was just stressed about money and he made a bad choice. But Mom, it wasn't malicious. He really was going to pay you back. I looked at her calmly. He went through my purse without permission and took money. That's theft. I know, and I'm not excusing it. But Mom, we're under a lot of pressure. The baby's coming in 6 weeks. We're trying to save money. We're stressed. Can you please just let this go? For me, for your grandchild. There it was. The weaponization of the grandchild. The emotional manipulation. I'm not pressing charges, but Shayna, this is a pattern. First the studio invasion. Then the house purchase pressure. Now theft. You and Dante keep pushing boundaries, and when I enforce them, you call me unreasonable. That pattern concerns me. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm watching very carefully, and I'm documenting everything. If you want to stay here until the baby comes, you can, but there will be no more boundary violations. No more going through my things, no more demanding my space, no more trying to take control of my home or my assets. Clear. Crystal, her voice was cold. You've made yourself very clear, Mom. You care more about your precious art and your precious boundaries than you care about your daughter and your grandchild. I care about being treated with respect. If that's too much to ask, then yes, my boundaries matter more than your comfort." She walked away, and I knew I'd just made an enemy of my own daughter. But I'd rather have an enemy I could see clearly than a friend who was secretly destroying me. 4 weeks before Shayna's due date, I woke up in the middle of the night feeling sick, nauseous, dizzy, disoriented. I made it to the bathroom before vomiting, multiple times, everything I'd eaten for dinner coming back up. Food poisoning, I thought, bad chicken or something. But the next morning, reviewing the security footage from the kitchen, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Dante making dinner while I was in the shower. Me in the background, camera catching everything. Him adding something to my plate, a powder, from a small container in his pocket. Not a lot, just a shake, barely visible, but unmistakable. He'd put something in my food. I watched the footage 5 times, confirmed what I was seeing, downloaded it immediately, backed it up everywhere. Then I called Dr. Toussaint. "I need blood work, immediately. I think someone put something in my food last night." I was at his office within an hour. Full toxicology screen, blood drawn, samples saved. "Camille, what makes you think you were poisoned?" I showed him the video. His face went pale. "This is attempted murder. Or attempted harm. I don't know what he put in my food, but I need to know what it was." The toxicology results came back 2 days later. Ipecac syrup, a substance that induces vomiting, used to be common in homes for accidental poisonings, now mostly discontinued. Not lethal, but harmful, especially to someone my age. Could cause dehydration, electrolyte imbalance, aspiration if I'd choked on my vomit. "Why would someone give you this?" Dr. Toussaint asked. "To make me sick, to make me seem frail or declining, to create incidents they could point to as evidence I couldn't care for myself." I paused, thinking it through. "Or to test whether I'd notice, whether they could drug me without my realizing it. Test run for something worse." "Maybe." Dr. Toussaint's expression was grim. "Camille, you need to go to the police. This is assault. Potentially attempted murder if they're working up to something more serious." "Not yet. I need more evidence. One incident they could explain away. I need a pattern." "That's dangerous." "So is accusing my pregnant daughter's husband of trying to poison me without enough proof to make it stick. Doctor, I need you to document this. The toxicology results, the video, everything. But I'm not going to the police yet." He agreed reluctantly, and I left with documentation of what Dante had done. That evening, I didn't eat anything I hadn't prepared myself, didn't eat anything they'd had access to. And I watched, waited, documented. If Dante had poisoned me once, he'd try again, and next time I'd be ready. 3 days later, I found another powder addition to my food. Different meal, same pattern, Dante adding something when he thought no one was watching. Caught on camera, documented, saved. This time I didn't eat the food, pretended to, then scraped it into a container when they weren't looking, took it to Dr. Toussaint for analysis. Same substance, Ipecac, same dose. 2 documented instances, pattern established. I called Simone. "I have proof, video evidence, toxicology results, 2 separate incidents of Dante poisoning my food." "Go to the police." "Not yet. I want to understand why first, what they're planning." "Camille, this is too dangerous." "I'm being careful. I'm not eating anything they prepare. I'm documenting everything. But Simone, if I go to the police now, Shayna is about to give birth. She'll be traumatized. The baby will be born into chaos. I want to wait until after the birth, then handle this. And if they escalate before then? Then I go to the police immediately. But Simone, I think I know what they're planning. And I think if I wait, they'll reveal it completely." What I didn't tell Simone was what I'd discovered going through bank statements. Small charges, to nursing homes, to assisted living facilities. They were touring facilities, looking at places to put me. The poisoning wasn't to kill me. It was to make me sick enough to seem like I needed care. To create medical incidents they could point to build a case that I couldn't live independently. Then they'd have me committed, take over my house, sell my art. That was the plan, and I was going to let them try. Because when they did, I'd have everything I needed to destroy them completely. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. 2 weeks before Shayna's due date, I found brochures in the recycling bin. 3 different assisted living facilities, all with notes in Dante's handwriting. Memory care wing available. Monthly cost $6,800. Can we afford this, or does C's insurance cover it? Studio apartment option. Could fit some of her paintings but not her workspace. Would need to sell most of collection. 24-hour supervision. Good for someone with episodes. Check if recent incidents documented anywhere official. See, not Camille, not Mom. Just see like I was a problem to be solved, not a person. I photographed every page, every note, added them to my evidence file. Then I did something they wouldn't expect. I called one of the facilities, posed as a concerned family member inquiring about a tour. Yes, a couple came through last week, young man and pregnant woman. They were asking about memory care for his mother-in-law, said she'd been having episodes. Confusion, forgetting things. They seemed very concerned. What did you tell them? That we'd need medical documentation of the cognitive decline, doctor's evaluation, that we couldn't admit someone based solely on family testimony. The young man seemed frustrated by that. I thanked her and hung up. Then I understood the final piece. They couldn't get me committed based on their word alone. They needed medical evidence of decline, evidence that didn't exist because I wasn't declining. So they were creating it. The poisoning was meant to cause episodes they could document, get me to a hospital, get a record of illness that looked like cognitive issues. Brilliant, cruel, systematic. And I was going to let them try one more time, because this time I'd be ready. I called Dr. Toussaint. The next time I'm poisoned, I need you ready to document everything. Full examination, toxicology, everything that proves the illness is induced, not natural decline. Camille, this is insane. This is evidence gathering. Doctor, I need this documented perfectly. So when I finally go to the police, there's no question about what happened. 3 days before Shayna's due date, Dante made dinner again. I watched him through the kitchen camera from my studio. Watched him add powder to my food. Same pattern. Same container from his pocket. This time I ate it. Not all of it, just enough to get sick. Enough to need medical attention. Within 2 hours, I was vomiting. Dizzy, disoriented, I called for Shayna. Mom, what's wrong? I don't feel well. I think I need to go to the hospital. Perfect concern on her face. Perfect worry. Dante, something's wrong with Mom. They drove me to the emergency room, stayed with me, played the devoted family. And I let them think it was working. The ER doctor ran tests. Dr. Toussaint had alerted the hospital, flagged my file. They knew to do a full toxicology screen. When the results came back showing Ipecac, the ER doctor's face changed. He pulled Shayna and Dante aside. I could hear them through the curtain. Mrs. Laurent has Ipecac syrup in her system. That's not something people typically ingest accidentally. Do you know how this could have happened? Ipecac, what's that? Shayna sounded genuinely confused. It's a substance that causes vomiting. It used to be used for poisoning cases, but it's mostly discontinued now. Mrs. Laurent, do you keep any in your home? I don't think so, I said weakly. I don't even know what that is. Could she have taken it herself? Dante asked. Maybe confused it for something else. There it was, the suggestion. Mom is confused. Mom took something by mistake. Mom is declining. The ER doctor looked at him carefully. That's unlikely. Ipecac has a very distinctive taste and appearance. Someone would have to deliberately ingest it or have it given to them without their knowledge. Are you saying someone poisoned my mother? Shayna's voice was perfect shock. I'm saying this needs to be investigated. I'm required to report this to the authorities. After the ER doctor left, Shayna and Dante exchanged a look. Quick, worried. Then Shayna turned to me. Mom, is there anything you need to tell us? Have you been trying to hurt yourself? Beautiful, they were pivoting. If they couldn't blame confusion, they'd try to blame suicide attempt. Either way, I'd be deemed unstable. No, I have no idea how that got in my system. Mom, it's okay if you're struggling. Depression in elderly people is common. We can get you help. I'm not depressed. I'm not suicidal. I didn't take anything. The police arrived 20 minutes later. Detective Sharon Reyes introduced herself and asked to speak with me privately. I told her everything. Showed her the videos on my phone. 3 separate incidents of Dante adding substances to my food. The toxicology results from Dr. Toussaint documenting the previous poisonings. Mrs. Laurent, why didn't you report this earlier? Because I needed a pattern. 1 incident they could explain away. 3 incidents, all documented, all with toxicology proof. That's attempted harm. Detective, my daughter and son-in-law have been trying to get control of my assets. They want my house, my art collection, my estate. They've been poisoning me to create medical incidents they can use to have me committed. I showed her the facility brochures, the notes about episodes, the evidence of their campaign. Detective Reyes took everything. Mrs. Laurent, we're going to need to bring your son-in-law in for questioning. Are you safe to go home? No, I'm staying with my niece Camille until this is resolved. I'm not going back to that house while they're there. I called Camille from the hospital. She picked me up within the hour, took me to her home across town. And I left Shayna and Dante at the hospital, being questioned by police, finally facing consequences. 2 days later, Shayna went into labor. Camille drove me to the hospital, different hospital than where the poisoning incident occurred. I stood outside Shayna's room, uncertain. She was my daughter. She tried to have me committed, but she was still my daughter, and she was about to have my grandchild. The nurse saw me hesitating. Are you family? I'm her mother. She's been asking for you. Do you want to go in? I entered the room. Shayna was in labor, in pain. When she saw me, she started crying. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what Dante was doing. I swear I didn't know about the poisoning. I looked at her carefully. But you knew about the facilities, about the plan to have me committed. She didn't deny it. I thought you were declining. Dante convinced me you were confused and we needed to help you. Mom, I didn't know he was making you sick on purpose. Did you know he was stealing from my purse? Yes. Did you know he was pressuring me to sell the house? Yes. Did you participate in trying to take my studio? Yes. Then Shayna, whether you knew about the poisoning specifically doesn't matter. You were part of a campaign to take control of my life. You were willing to have me institutionalized to get my assets. That you drew the line at poisoning doesn't absolve you of the rest. Mom, please, I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I'm about to have a baby, your grandchild. Can we please talk about this after? A contraction hit. She screamed, and I watched my daughter in pain about to become a mother, and I felt complicated. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something softer than the anger I'd been carrying. We'll talk after, I said. Focus on the baby now. I stayed through the delivery, watched my granddaughter being born, 7 pounds, 3 ounces, perfect, beautiful. They named her Camille, after me. When the nurse handed her to me, when I held my granddaughter for the first time, I felt something crack in my chest. This tiny person who was innocent of everything her parents had done. Shayna watched me hold the baby. Mom, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what we did was unforgivable. But please, please don't cut us off completely. I don't want my daughter growing up without her grandmother. I looked at this baby, at my daughter, at the complicated mess of love and betrayal and family. We'll talk, I said again. After you've recovered, after the police investigation is complete, after we all understand what happens next. What happened next came faster than I expected. 3 days after baby Camille was born, Detective Reyes called me. "Mrs. Laurent, we've charged Dante Beaumont with 3 counts of attempted poisoning and 1 count of elder abuse. He's been arrested. Bail is set at $75,000. What about Shayna? We're still investigating her involvement. The facility tour, the studio demands, the financial pressure, all of that creates a pattern of exploitation. But we need to determine if she knew about the poisoning specifically or if she was manipulated by Dante." She told me she didn't know about the poisoning. Do you believe her? I thought about that carefully. I believe she didn't know the specific method, but I believe she knew they were trying to create evidence of my decline. She was complicit in the goal, if not the tactic. That's helpful clarity. Mrs. Laurent, we'll need your testimony when this goes to trial. Are you prepared for that? Yes. After the call, I sat thinking about what was coming. A trial. My son-in-law facing criminal charges. My daughter potentially facing charges too. My granddaughter being born into chaos. But also, my life protected. My assets secured. My studio remaining mine, truth winning over manipulation. Was it worth it? The family fracture, the pain, the public exposure. Yes, because the alternative was being institutionalized, being robbed of my final years, being erased in my own life. I'd rather have a broken family and my freedom than a false harmony and captivity. 2 weeks after the arrest, Shayna called me. "Mom, can we meet? Just you and me and the baby, please." We met at a park, neutral ground. Shayna pushed little Camille in a stroller. The baby was beautiful, alert, perfect. "Mom, Dante's attorney is pushing for a plea deal. They want him to plead guilty to elder abuse and attempted harm in exchange for reduced charges. No jail time, just probation and restitution." What do you want me to say? I want to know if you'll agree to it. The prosecutor says they need your cooperation since you're the victim. Why would I agree to that? Because if he goes to trial and gets convicted, he could go to prison for years. Our daughter would grow up without a father. Mom, I know what he did was wrong. I know he hurt you. But please, think about Camille. I looked at the baby, at my granddaughter sleeping peacefully, at the innocence that had nothing to do with her father's crimes. I'll think about it, but Shayna, I need something from you first. Anything. I need the truth, all of it. When did this start? When did you and Dante decide to try to take control of my life? She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. About a year ago, we were drowning in debt. Student loans, credit cards, the expense of trying to get pregnant through IVF. We owed $180,000 and we couldn't keep up with the payments. Dante said we should move in with you temporarily to save money. I agreed. When did it become about more than saving money? About 6 months in, we realized how much your art was worth. Dante started researching. Found out your collection was valued at almost $1 million. He said if we could get control of it, if something happened to you or if you needed care, we could solve all our money problems. So you started building a case that I needed care. Yes, small things at first, suggesting you were forgetful, planting doubts. Then bigger things, the studio demand, the house purchase pressure, making you seem difficult and unreasonable so people would believe you were declining. And the poisoning. I swear I didn't know about that until after your hospital visit. Dante told me afterward. He said he'd been giving you small doses of Ipecac to make you sick, to create medical incidents, to build evidence you couldn't live alone. Mom, when I found out, I was horrified. But I also didn't stop him. I didn't go to the police. I let it happen because I wanted the end result even if I didn't want to know how we got there. She started crying. I'm a terrible person, I know that. I tried to steal from my own mother. I put your life at risk. I don't deserve forgiveness and I'm not asking for it. I'm just asking. Please don't let my daughter pay for my sins. Please let Dante take the plea deal so she doesn't grow up visiting her father in prison. I looked at my daughter, at the baby, at the wreckage of our family. I'll agree to the plea deal on one condition. What? You both get help, real help, financial counseling, therapy. Whatever it takes to understand why you thought this was acceptable. And Shayna, you move out of my house. Find your own place. Build your own life. Not on my foundation, on yours. We can't afford our own place. That's not my problem. You and Dante created this debt. You solve it, without my money, without my house, without expecting me to fund the life you tried to steal. Mom, we have a newborn. Then you figure it out like every other young family with a newborn. You budget, you sacrifice, you work, but you don't get to steal from me and then demand I support you. Shayna, those are my terms. Take them or I push for the maximum sentence. She was crying harder now. You're really going to make us leave. I'm really going to require that you stand on your own feet. Yes. What about Camille? What about your granddaughter? I want to be part of her life, but on my terms, with clear boundaries. You bring her to visit. I don't come to your home, wherever that ends up being, because I can't trust you yet. We meet in public places. Supervised at first. And Shayna, if you ever try anything like this again, if you ever try to manipulate or control or steal, I'm done. Completely. You'll never see me again. She nodded through tears. Okay, I agree. Thank you, Mom, for letting Dante take the plea, for not completely cutting us off. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for that baby. She deserves better than being born into this mess. But Shayna, this is your last chance. Use it wisely. Dante took the plea deal 2 weeks later. Pleaded guilty to elder abuse and attempted harm. Sentenced to 5 years probation, 500 hours of community service, mandatory therapy, and $35,000 in restitution to me for medical costs and damages. No jail time, but a record, a felony conviction that would follow him forever. Shayna and Dante moved out 1 month later, found a small apartment across town, struggled financially, but survived. And I got my house back, my studio back, my life back. I changed the locks again, removed their key access, reset all my passwords, secured everything. Then I did something I'd been planning since this started. I created a foundation. The Laurent Art Legacy Foundation, dedicated to supporting elderly artists whose families were pressuring them to give up their work, providing legal help, financial assistance, studio space to artists facing exploitation. I seeded it with $200,000 from my savings, set it up to inherit my art collection when I died, made sure my life's work would support other artists facing what I'd faced. The foundation's motto, your art is not in the way, your art is the way. 6 months after everything ended, I was back in my studio, working on a new series. The camera still recorded, I kept that security measure, but the space was mine again, peaceful, protected. Brielle visited that afternoon. Mom, I saw the foundation announcement. It's beautiful. But can I ask, do you think Shayna will ever really understand what she did? I don't know. She says the right things now. Apologizes, seems remorseful. But Brielle, I don't know if she's sorry she did it or sorry she got caught. Does it matter? Maybe not. What matters is that I'm safe. My work is protected. And little Camille has a chance to grow up learning different values than her parents showed. Do you regret having her in your life, after everything? I thought about that question, about my granddaughter, about the complicated love I felt for an innocent child born from such betrayal. No, I don't regret it, but I'm careful, very careful. I see Camille once a week at the park, always in public, always supervised. I love her, but I don't trust her parents, and I won't risk being vulnerable to them again. That's sad. It's realistic. Brielle, they poisoned me, tried to have me committed, tried to steal everything I'd built. That's not something you forgive because time passes. That's something you protect yourself from forever. 1 year after Dante's conviction, Shayna asked if we could have dinner. Just the two of us. We met at a restaurant, neutral ground again. She looked older, tired, but also more grounded. Mom, I've been in therapy for a year. Real therapy, not just the court-mandated stuff. And I've learned some things I wanted to share with you. I'm listening. I learned that I saw you as a resource, not a person. Your success, your money, your house, I saw them as things I deserved access to because I was your daughter. I never saw the work you put in. The decades of building your career, the sacrifices you made. I just saw assets I was entitled to." She paused, choosing words carefully. "My therapist asked me when I stopped seeing you as my mother and started seeing you as a bank account. I couldn't answer, because I think maybe I always saw you that way, even as a kid. Mom provides. Mom has money. Mom's job is to give me what I need." That's honest. I'm trying to be, because Mom, I can't undo what I did. I can't give back the year of your life we stole with our schemes. I can't erase the fear you felt being poisoned in your own home, but I can acknowledge it. I can stop making excuses. I can say clearly, I saw you as a problem to solve instead of a person to respect, and I'm sorry. I looked at my daughter, at the woman who tried to destroy me, who is now trying to rebuild something honest from the wreckage. I appreciate the apology. I appreciate the work you're doing. But Shayna, I don't know if I can ever trust you again. I know, I don't expect trust. I just wanted you to know I finally understand what I did, and why it was unforgivable. We ate in silence for a while. Then Shayna asked, "Can I tell you something about Camille?" "The baby." Yes, she started saying words, and her first word was art. She points at pictures and says art. "Mom, I think she has your eye, your appreciation for beauty." Something softened in my chest. "Does that make you happy or sad?" "Both. Happy that she might have inherited something good from you. Sad that I almost destroyed the things she's drawn to. Mom, I'm going to make sure she knows about your work, about your career, about what you built. I'm going to make sure she grows up understanding that art isn't in the way. It's valuable. It's important. It's a legacy." "Thank you." "And Mom, when you do the foundation events, the gallery shows for elderly artists, the studio tour, can Camille come? I want her to grow up seeing what you're doing, understanding why it matters." I thought about that, about my granddaughter learning to value art because she saw me value it, about a different legacy than the one Shayna had tried to steal. Yes, she can come to the public events, with supervision, with boundaries, but yes. 2 years after the poisoning, I was 73, still working, still creating, still running the foundation that had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We'd helped 47 elderly artists, provided legal support for 12 exploitation cases, created a network of protected studio spaces, built a community. And I'd created my best work, a series called In the Way, 13 paintings exploring the experience of being dismissed, devalued, told you're an obstacle. The series sold for $340,000. Every penny went to the foundation. Critics called it my masterwork, the culmination of 4 decades of artistic evolution, but I knew it was more than that. It was documentation, evidence, proof that when someone tells you you're in the way, they're really saying, you're in the way of what I want to take from you. And the answer isn't to shrink, isn't to move, isn't to make yourself smaller. The answer is to nod calmly, and wait, and watch them reveal exactly who they are. Then protect yourself with every tool available. 3 years after everything ended, little Camille was learning to draw. I set up a small easel in my studio, the studio Shayna had tried to take, and taught my granddaughter to paint. She was 3 years old, too young to understand what her parents had done, too young to know the history of this room, but old enough to learn that art mattered, that creativity was valuable, that when someone tells you you're in the way, you stand your ground. "Grandma, what are you painting?" "A memory, sweetheart, of a time when someone told me I was in the way." "What did you do?" I nodded calmly, and I waited, and I protected what mattered most. "Your art." "Yes, and myself, and the truth." She went back to her painting, abstract swirls of color that made no logical sense, but were beautiful anyway. And I went back to mine, still creating, still working, still proving that art wasn't an obstacle to life. Art was life, and anyone who tried to take it from me would learn what I'd learned. When they say you're in the way, they mean you're in the way of their plans to use you. And the only response is to stay exactly where you are. Let them reveal themselves, document everything, and protect what matters with absolute clarity. I'd nodded calmly when told me I was in the way. And then I'd waited, watched, documented, protected. And I'd won, not through confrontation, through patience, through understanding that the person telling you to move is really telling you what they plan to take. That was my story, not a story of a weak elderly woman who gave up her studio for family harmony, but a story of an artist who understood her worth, who protected her legacy, who refused to shrink when someone tried to make her smaller, who nodded calmly and waited and won. If this story touched you, please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional stories like this. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Somewhere out there, I might be reading.